Middle School Language Arts, Module 4, Language Use, Vocabulary, Writing, Speaking, and Listening. Words and word parts. One of the most important components of building a strong vocabulary is learning how words are formed. Root words are the main part of a word that carries the primary meaning. Affixes are word parts that can be affixed or added on to a root word to change its meaning. Consider the following nonsense example: pre-glubbed. Even if glub was a word I didn't know, there are two things I can tell you about this word. Since it uses the prefix pre, I know that I glubbed before I did something else. Since glub has the suffix ed, I know that this pre-step has already been completed in the past. Using nonsense root words is one strategy that teachers can employ to help their students gain an understanding of affixes, because it forces them to rely not on prior knowledge of the root word, but on knowledge of the affix itself. Prefixes and suffixes. Affix is the general category for word add-ons. Prefixes are affixes that are added to the beginning of a word. Suffixes are affixes that are added to the end of a word. It is important to teach students that adding prefixes and suffixes can change the tense and the meaning of a word. We are going to look at some common prefixes and suffixes in the following slides. If any of these are unfamiliar, it is highly recommended that you create note cards, either paper or digital, to help you memorize these common affixes. What is the general term for a word that is added to a root word? A prefix, a suffix, an affix, or a morphix? The correct answer is C. The general term for a word part that is added to a root word is an affix. Remember, prefixes are added to the beginning, suffixes are added to the end, and affix is the general category for word parts that are added to root words. Common prefixes. A or an, meaning without. An amoral person is a person without morals. Notice by taking the root word moral, which normally means good or right, and adding a, we change the meaning to be a person without morals. Ante, before. An antebellum home is one built before the war. In the United States, this generally refers to a house built before the Civil War. You'll notice that the prefix ante means before, and bellum is the Latin term for war, so antebellum, before the war. Anti means against. An anti-theft device is a device designed to guard against theft. Auto means self. Autopilot is something that can pilot itself. You might also be familiar with an autobiography. This is a book that one writes about themselves. Circum means around. To circumscribe means to draw a circle around something. Co means with. A co-teacher is someone who teaches a class with you. Prefix review question. Which prefix means against? Anti, a, anti, or auto? The correct answer is C. The prefix that means against is anti. Be careful not to confuse it with ante, the prefix that means before. Contra means against. To contradict is to speak against what was just said. Notice the word parts. DICT is similar to diction or speaking. Contra, against. Therefore, when you put them together, you have contradict. Dis means not. Disgrace is not demonstrating gracious behavior. En means into. This is where we get our word entrance, the way you go into a building. Ex means out of. The word exit uses the ex prefix to say that it is the way you leave a building. Extra means more than. So if something is extraneous, it's something that is not necessary or not required. Homo means same. Something that is homogeneous is the same throughout. You'll hear this term often used to describe solutions in chemistry or to describe milk. We buy homogenized milk that has the same content throughout. Prefix review question. Which of the following prefixes means not? Dis, ex, in, or extra? The correct answer is A. The prefix that means not is dis. Remember our example, disgrace is to act in a way that does not show grace. Hyper means extra. If someone is hypersensitive, they are extra sensitive about a particular topic. Hypo means low. If someone is hypoglycemic, it means they have low blood sugar. Notice that there are several prefixes for not or negative. Il, im, in, and ear. If someone is impartial, they are not favoring one side. If someone is intolerant, they are not tolerant. Also notice the prefixes for between. There are two, inter and intra. An interstate highway is one that goes between states. Macro means large. Macroeconomics is the study of economics on a national or even international scale. Micro means small. Microeconomics is the study of economics on the personal or individual level. Mono means one. A monopoly occurs when one business has total control of an industry. Review question. Which of the following prefix sets means large and small? A. Pre and post. B. Hypo and hyper. C. In and ex. Or D. Macro and micro. The correct answer is D. The prefix set that means large and small is macro and micro. Pre and post mean before and after. Hypo and hyper mean extra and low. In and ex mean into and out of. Therefore, macro and micro is the correct choice because this set means large and small. Non means without. Nonsense is a word that does not make any sense. Omni means all. Omniscient is the quality of being all-knowing, and omnipresent is the quality of being in all places at the same time. This is why you might hear a book described as having an omniscient narrator, or a narrator that knows all the characters' thoughts. Post means after. A postscript, commonly abbreviated PS, is a thought added after a letter. Pre means before. A precedent is how things have been done before. You'll often hear this in legal terminology when people talk about past court rulings as legal precedent. Sub means under. A subpoint is a point that is not your main point, but a point that comes under your main point. An easy way to remember this is that a submarine is a boat that goes under the water. Sink means at the same time. To synchronize is to do something at the same time. You may also be familiar with this term from online courses because a course that is synchronous requires everyone to be online at the same time. An asynchronous course is one in which people can do the work at different times. Trans means across. A transatlantic flight is one that goes across the Atlantic Ocean. Review question. If I wanted to describe the economy in the United States immediately after World War II, which of the following would be the correct prefix? Pre-war, post-war, interwar, or intra-war? The correct answer is B. If I wanted to describe the economy immediately after World War II, I would be looking at the post-war economy. You'll hear post added to many words to mean after. 0. Null. A null hypothesis is something that I believe will not happen or something that has zero chance of happening. 1. Uni. A unicycle is like a bicycle but with one wheel instead of two. 2. Do. Duel. A duel is a battle between two people. 3. Tri. Tricycle. This is a cycle that has three wheels. 4. Quad or quat. A quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. 5. Penta. The pentagon is a five-sided building. 6. Hexa. A hexagon is a six-sided shape. 7. Hepta. A heptathlon is an athletic competition with 7 events. 8. Octo. Octagon. This is an 8-sided shape like a stop sign. 9. Nova. This is where we get our month November. In the Roman calendar, November was the 9th month. And 10. Deci. Decimal system, a system based on units of 10. Please note that there are additional number prefixes and alternate number prefixes for many numbers. These are simply common examples that most people will find familiar. Review question. What prefix might I use to describe 4 children who were born at the same time? Triplets, quadruplets, quintuplets, or sextuplets? The correct answer is B. The term for 4 children born at the same time is quadruplets. 100. Centi. A centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. 1000. Milli. A millimeter is 1/1000th of a meter. Billion is 10 to the 9th power. A billionaire is a person with $1 billion. Multi means many. A multitude is a group of many people. Mini means small. Miniature is a small version of something. Hemi means half. A hemisphere is half the earth, or of any other sphere. Mono means one. A monocle is one eyeglass lens, usually on a chain. Poly means many. A polyglot is a person who speaks many languages. Review question. If I wanted to describe someone who had many millions of dollars, which prefix might I use? Mini-millionaire, monomillionaire, post-millionaire, or multi-millionaire? The correct answer is D. If I wanted to describe someone who had many millions of dollars, the correct prefix would be multi. This person would be a multi-millionaire. Suffixes. The next series of slides will look at common suffixes, or affixes that are added to the end of words. Remind students that adding suffixes can change a word's meaning and a word's part of speech. Like prefixes, it is highly recommended that you make either paper or digital note cards for any of the suffixes that you find unfamiliar. Suffixes. You'll notice that the first several suffixes deal with state of being. All, dismissal, the state of being dismissed. Ance, acceptance, the state of being accepted. Ation, celebration, the state of being celebrated. Ion, confusion, the state of being confused. Failure, the state of one who has failed. Ing, sleeping, the state of being asleep. Age refers to the act of. Marriage is the act of being married. Review question. Which of the following suffixes does not refer to a state of being? Ion, ing, or age. The correct answer is D, age. Age does not refer to the state of being. Age is the act of. Ion, and ing are all state of being suffixes. Airy, business or trade. A bakery is a business that bakes. A brewery is a business that brews. One who performs an action. A teacher is one who teaches. A preacher is one who preaches. Ist is one who practices. A pianist is one who practices the piano. A pharmacist is one who practices pharmacy. Ity is the state of. Equity is the state of being equal. Liquidity is the state of being liquid. Or is one who does. A distributor is one who distributes. A conductor is one who conducts. Ship is position held. An internship is the position of an intern. Mentorship is the position of being a mentor. Which of the following would be the correct suffix to describe one who does something? Or, ity, or both A and B? The correct answer is D. Both A and B can be used to describe one who does something. For example, could be a teacher, or could be a conductor. Able, capable of being. Predictable, capable of being predicted. Preventable, capable of being prevented. All, relating to. Criminal, relating to crime. Natural, relating to nature. Ious, having the quality of. Cautious is having the quality of caution. Humorous is having the quality of humor. Ed, in the past. Walked was to walk in the past. Ing is the act of. Running is the act of one who runs. And eyes, to become. To specialize is to become a specialist. Review question. Which of the following suffixes can be added to an action to make it a thing, the act of? Ed, ious, ing, or able? The correct answer is C, ing. You can take a word like run that is normally a verb and add ing to say running, or the act of one who runs. Therefore, the correct answer is C. Writing and speaking. Writing and speaking are essential academic skills that should be incorporated across all academic disciplines. Personal writing is writing that is based on an individual's personal knowledge, experience, and creativity. Researched writing is writing that is based on information gathered from credible sources and cited or credited to the original source. Both personal and researched writing should be clear, well organized, and should have a voice and tone that is appropriate to the author's purpose. Dialect and Diction. Author's voice. The author's voice is the quality that makes an individual writer's work unique. Many factors combine to form an author's voice. Syntax is the arrangement of words or phrases to create a sentence. Diction is the choice of words used to express an idea. Dialect is language use that is specific to a region or a group of people. And tone is the author's attitude toward the subject. Academic versus creative and personal writing. It's important to remember that there are differences between academic and creative writing. Academic writing tends toward a neutral academic voice and standard grammatical rules as prescribed by a style guide. Creative writing, both fiction and nonfiction, can take on many different voices that reflect the author's unique experience. Review question. What is the difference between syntax and diction? A. Syntax is sentence structure and diction is word choice. B. Syntax is language specific to a region or group of people, and diction is standard academic English. C. Syntax is not part of an author's voice, while diction is part of an author's voice. Or D. Syntax is the author's attitude toward the subject, while diction is the reader's attitude toward the subject. The correct answer is A. The difference between syntax and diction is that syntax refers to sentence structure, while diction refers to word choice. Language resources. It is important to know the resources you can use to help your students improve their writing skills. A dictionary. If a student can approximate the spelling of a word, they can use a dictionary to look it up. Dictionaries are also a good source for spelling, definitions, and etymology or word history. A thesaurus. A thesaurus is a good resource for finding words with denotative meanings similar to the word that you are searching. It is important to remind students that a thesaurus does not give connotative meanings. Looking up a word like group could give you synonyms with very different connotative meanings. You might find words like assembly, category, class, congregation, crew, horde, gang, and mob. While all of these words do refer to groups, the connotation of each one is very different. Digital dictionaries add an extra resource because they can also allow students to search words by sound, and they can provide pronunciations along with many other resources that traditional print dictionaries cannot. What is the difference between a dictionary and a thesaurus? A. A dictionary gives connotative meanings while a thesaurus gives denotative meanings. B. A dictionary gives definitions while a thesaurus gives synonyms with similar denotative meanings. C. A dictionary gives correct spellings while a thesaurus does not. Or D. A dictionary gives synonyms with similar denotative meanings while a thesaurus gives definitions. The correct answer is B. The difference between a dictionary and a thesaurus is that a dictionary gives definitions while a thesaurus gives synonyms with similar denotative meanings. Style guides versus dictionaries. It's important for students to know that dictionaries, both print and digital, are descriptive, not prescriptive. This means that dictionaries describe how language is commonly used. They do not prescribe how language should be used. Therefore, just because a word is in the dictionary, that does not mean that it is correct or that it is academically acceptable. While there is commonly accepted correct academic grammar, the rules change depending on the academic field and the author's purpose. For example, an author writing a fictional story may deliberately use incorrect grammar because it's the wording the character she is creating would have used. To learn the rules for a particular writing style, you should refer to a style guide. Many academic fields have their own style guides that are specific to their discipline. Examples of style guides. Journalism and media fields tend to use the AP or Associated Press style guide. Many humanities fields use the Chicago or Turabian style guide. Nursing and medical professions tend to use the style guide of the American Medical Association. English and language arts will often use MLA or the Modern Language Association, while psychology and the social sciences tend to use APA or the American Psychological Association. It's important to remember that all of the style guides give specifics for writing in a given academic discipline. Two elements of writing. The first element of writing is the task or purpose. This is the reason an author is writing. It may be an assigned task for a class or a publisher, or it may be for a specific purpose, such as persuading an audience to do something or informing people about an important topic. The second element of writing is audience. The audience is the person who is intended to read an author's work. The author will adjust the diction, syntax, and organizational style based on the audience to whom they are writing. It is not uncommon for authors to write different versions of a text designed to appeal to different audiences. Review question. Why might an author write different versions of a text? A. To change the message behind what they are writing. B. To simplify the word choice and make the author's message accessible to different audiences. C. To change the organizational style to meet the needs of a particular audience or situation. Or D. Both B and C. The correct answer is D. Both B and C. An author may write different versions of a text to simplify the word choice and make the author's message accessible to different audiences, and the author may write different versions of a text to change the organizational style to meet the needs of a particular audience or situation. Note, an author will not write different versions of a text to change the message behind the text. The goal is to make the message accessible to the audience. Factors in evaluating writing. As educators, we will be required to evaluate and give feedback on student writing. There are three major factors to consider. First, you should look at whether the writing is clear. Does the writer choose words and phrases that convey ideas in a way that the reader can understand? Second, you should look at the development and coherence. Does the writer make logical points and follow up with relevant, consistent supporting details that support their point? Third, you should look for organization. Writing should demonstrate a clear organizational strategy that presents information logically and in a manner that can be understood by the reader. Researched writing. Researched writing is a type of writing that removes the personal element and is not based on the writer's own knowledge and experience. For this reason, you'll often hear teachers tell students not to use first-person pronouns such as I and me in researched writing. The writing should be about the topic, not about the individual. To begin a researched writing project, the writer must start with a thesis or main idea, and then support the thesis with evidence gathered from relevant, credible sources. In the paper, all evidence is cited or credited back to the source from which it was gathered. This gives the author credibility to write about topics that are beyond their personal knowledge because the text is not based on their knowledge but on their research. The method of citation is determined by the style guide that governs the academic discipline in which the author is writing. Review question. How is researched writing different from personal writing? A. Researched writing is based on experience and knowledge, where personal writing is based on information gathered from credible sources. B. Personal writing is based on experience and knowledge, where researched writing is based on information gathered from credible sources. C. Personal writing is always fictional, while researched writing is always factual. Or D. Researched writing uses pronouns such as I and me, while personal writing does not. The correct answer is B. Researched writing is different from personal writing because personal writing is based on experience and knowledge, where researched writing is based on information gathered from credible sources. Qualities of an effective thesis. There are 3 important qualities you should consider when teaching your students to write a thesis. First, an effective thesis is provable with empirical evidence. Consider the following examples. Clear-cutting forest can have a negative impact on the environment. Note this is phrased as a persuasive thesis. I could also phrase it as an informative thesis, understanding the impact of clear-cutting forests. Both of these examples are effective because they can be researched and supported with empirical, factual evidence. Likewise, if someone disagreed, they could form an argument based on empirical evidence to try to disprove the thesis. The second thing to remember is that an effective thesis is not based on beliefs or opinions. Doing blank is right or wrong because blank. This thesis would not be effective because it's based on beliefs and values, not empirical evidence. The problem with creating an argument based on beliefs, values, and opinions is that there's no way to effectively weigh one person's beliefs against another's. Each person has a right to their own beliefs and opinions. So in academic circles, we try to stick to things that we can prove empirically. The third thing you want to remember is that an effective thesis is appropriate in scope to the writer's task. If a writer was assigned to write a paper for class, it would not be reasonable to write about World War II, even though these are the type of topics that your students will often bring to you. To really cover this topic adequately, a writer would have to produce a multi-volume set of books. It would be reasonable for a writer to write a paper about major United States naval battles on the Pacific Front during World War II. Note that the topic is limited to only major battles. I've not said that we're going to cover every naval battle, and it's limited to only battles involving the United States and only battles on the Pacific Front. This topic is limited in scope so that it's appropriate to the task and it would fit into a classroom paper. Which of the following is not one of the qualities of an effective thesis? A. Provable. B. Not based on beliefs and opinions. C. Appropriate in scope. Or D. The subject is one that the author feels passionate about. The correct answer is D. Which of the following is not one of the qualities of an effective thesis? It's not necessary for the author to feel passionate about a subject for a thesis to be effective. In fact, sometimes a little bit of objectivity can make a thesis much more effective. Credibility of sources. Whether using digital or print sources, it's important to evaluate a source's credibility, or quality and trustworthiness. There are many factors that can determine a source's credibility. Here are a few. First, you might look at the credentials of the author. What is the author's level of education? What is their professional background? Second, you might look to see if the source is peer-reviewed. A peer-reviewed article is one that has been evaluated by other professionals in an author's field prior to publication. Information should also be current and up-to-date. Note that this may be different for different academic disciplines. Fields such as technology can change very quickly, where fields like history and literature may reasonably use texts that are much older and still consider them up to date. Finally, check to see if the publisher of the source is reputable and whether they have any known bias or financial interest that could influence their objectivity. How does a writer evaluate the credibility of a source? A. Look at the quality of the website on which it is posted. B. Check to see how many views and shares the information has received. C. Check the credentials of the author. Beware of potential biases from the publisher, and make sure the information is up to date. Or D. See if the source agrees with what the author wants to say. The correct answer is C. To evaluate the credibility of a source, you should look at the credentials of the author, beware of potential biases from the publisher, and make sure the info is up to date. An important note on this question. Many students will look at the quality of a website on which something is posted as a way to determine whether or not the information is high quality. It's very important to teach them early on in the research process to be savvy consumers of information. Just because someone is a good web designer and has good graphics, it doesn't mean that the information that they're sharing is correct. Second, you'll find many students will look at the number of views and shares that information has received. Just because something has been viewed or shared many times, that doesn't make that information accurate. In fact, many times, false information can be widespread before it's actually debunked. Finally, just because a source agrees with what you want to say, that doesn't necessarily make the source credible. It's important for students to understand that their role as good consumers of information is to be detectives and to check the credentials of the author and the biases of the publisher before they use information in their research or before they share it. Presenting information. Delivery occurs when a writer presents their work to an audience in the form of a speech or presentation. Several factors should be considered when evaluating the quality of a writer's delivery. First, a writer should make eye contact when delivering information. A writer should be familiar with their subject so that they're able to look away from their notes and visual aids and make eye contact with the audience. This causes the audience to feel connected to the speaker and creates a sense of trust. It also helps keep the audience engaged. Second, visual aids. Visual aids can be a useful tool to help a writer convey ideas to an audience that are not easily conveyed verbally. Visual aids should be clear and relevant. Finally, the tone is very important. Tone, when a presenter is giving information, should match the topic. It's important to remember that an academic presentation should present a neutral tone that makes the author appear credible and unbiased. Review question. What are the qualities of a good visual aid? A. A good visual aid is used to convey information to an audience that cannot be easily conveyed verbally. B. Text and graphics used in visual aids should be clear and sized so that they are easy for an audience to read. C. Visual aids should be relevant to the presentation. Avoid visuals that are strictly for entertainment with limited relevance to the topic. Or D. All of the above. The correct answer is D. All of the above. A good visual aid is used to convey information to an audience that cannot be easily conveyed verbally. It's important to remember that text and graphics in visual aids should be clear and sized so that they are easy for an audience to read. Just a tip for when you start teaching this, it's very important to show students that text over graphics is hard to read from a distance. It's also important to teach them about color contrast between texts and backgrounds. Those things can make a huge difference in the quality of the visual aids that they use in their presentations. Finally, visual aids should be relevant to the presentation. Avoid visual aids that are strictly for entertainment with limited relevance to the topic.